Welcome to the Wingman Show. Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown, and we are floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots. Rumble. My wingman, that other badass jet pilot, my main man, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother Paul?
Oh, good morning, Mr. Drew. It's good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. You've been absent for a couple of weeks. Hope you've been doing all right. And I'm excited to do a good show today.
Oh, I'm doing real good. You haven't seen me because I went on that cruise we'll talk about a little bit, Virgin Voyages. Oh, my God. But let's start off with a quote that we always do. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. Let's do that again. Let go of who you're supposed to be and embrace who you really are. That's by Brent Brown, and I love that quote because a lot of people try to be something that they're not. Be who you are and be good at it. All right. So, most shows believe, media believes, if it bleeds, it leads. The Wingman Show, no. We think if it's good, it should. And we'll start off with this. How about the top 5 happiest cities in America? Would you like to know about that, Dr. Paul?
Yes. Which are they?
Okay. We'll start off with, but first, let me tell you this. The way that they did this survey is that they looked at emotional and physical well-being. They looked at income and employment and community and environment. So that's how they picked these cities, and they did 182 of them. So we're going to start off with the top 5, starting from number 5. Drum, please. San Francisco, California. Number 4, Overland Park, Kansas, which is a surprise. Number 3, Madison, Wisconsin. Number 2, San Jose, California. And number 1, happiest city in America is Fremont, California. What do you think about those choices, Dr. Paul?
That's interesting. It's a lot of California. Fremont. I think that's north. Isn't that north of San Francisco, Sacramento-ish kind of area? I think so. It's pretty out there. It's been a little time out there. It's pretty.
It's beautiful, North California. Well, if there's a top 5, guess what, Dr. Paul? There's a bottom 5. And so the bottom 5, and I'll start from the worst, the 182nd worst city in America is Detroit, Michigan. And then Huntington, West Virginia, Shreveport, Louisiana, Cleveland, Ohio, and Montgomery, Alabama. Those are the 10 saddest cities, or the 5 saddest cities in America. And I've been to all of them except for, I've been to Huntington, West Virginia too. Very poor, poor, very white. When you talk about welfare, I don't think there are many Black people on welfare in West Virginia. What do you think, Dr. Paul?
Okay, well, some of those places I've never been to Huntington, West Virginia, driven through parts of West Virginia. And yeah, it's not the most affluent part of the country I've been through. Never been to Overland, Kansas. I've heard about it. The other cities in California, yes, I like them. I really like the Bay Area. I think it's just a beautiful area, day and night. Seattle's also very beautiful at night, in particular. There's a lot of beauty in the country. The sad parts, it's bad if it's sad, but if you're in one of these sad places, we're not trying to run you down. Everybody should have hope. We want to give hope to people. That was just a ranking from a survey. There may be different surveys that have different results. So don't take anything too personally. If it's bad or if it's super good, there may be places better than those in the top 5, depending on who you're asking.
Well, the number 1 place I know is where I'm at right here, where I live. It's the number 1 happiest city in the world to me. These are just surveys. These are just bits of information we like to give out. That's all it is.
Right.
Don't, like Dr. Paul said, please, if you live in one of these cities, don't take it too high, too low. There's just information that we want to give out. And this is like good news. You want to hear some other good news? Have you ever heard of MacKenzie Scott?
I have.
I read an article about MacKenzie Scott, and she's given away over $14 billion since 2020. And I read the whole article, and I'm saying, I know that name from somewhere. Well, very funny. They did not mention Amazon. They did not mention Jeff Bezos. And you let me know, this is Jeff Bezos' ex-wife that got a whole bunch of, how much did she get in that divorce?
I don't know the dollar figure. I think at the time it was like 25% of Amazon stock. But since that time, the Amazon stock has been skyrocketing. So it's likely that she gave away, a significant amount of money and may have made it all back or made a lot of it back.
Oh, I'm sure she has. If it's invested well, you almost can't spend it. But what I was thinking is she's giving 14 billion away out of maybe 80 billion. What if most of these billionaires gave half their money away right now? Nothing in their life would change, nothing, but something in a lot of other people's lives would change. Because what happens, they all wait till they die and then they give it. Why don't people give money while they're alive and see the fruits of their labor, which I think is wonderful. I think giving to charity is some of the best things you can do. And don't you ever forget this. The more you give, the more you get, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, and that's true. And there are some that do that. There's something called a charitable remainder trust. There are many trusts you can set up, but some wealthy will have, they'll set aside a certain amount of assets that are invested in some operation that's bringing them money, and they'll derive income from it for a while, and then when they pass on, it goes automatically to that charity. So whatever is remaining goes to the charity, and so it's actually tax advantageous to do that. So they may be living off some of it, or they'll live off some of it and donate at the same time. These trust agreements can be really, really complicated, but if you've got that level of wealth, you can if you want to, you can come up with your own plan that's workable.
That's very good. Dr. Paul, we were talking about the happiest cities. Well, how about the 3 secrets to happiness? How about number 1, there are no secrets. Number 2, there aren't only 3. And number 3, it takes a lifetime. Happiness is within you. So, Dr. Paul, you know what we're doing here. You said you haven't seen me in a little while. Well, the last show we talked about how Delta Airlines really hooked up Katrina when they were late for a flight. Well, I just went on a wonderful cruise, Virgin Voyages, and I flew down to Miami. Except this time, Delta, it took 3 planes to get me down there. The good news is I was about 2 hours late getting to Miami, which put me on the ship exactly at the time I was supposed to be there. I will tell you something. This Virgin voyage was amazing. The people on the ship were amazing. No children were on the ship. They don't allow kids under 18 to be on this cruise, but everybody was happy. But one of the most amazing things I noticed is that the crew, there were no Americans on. A lot of Filipinos, a lot from Indonesia, some from Brazil, some from Croatia, from Serbia. They had a lot of Eastern Europeans there. But one guy told me, I said, how come there are no Americans? And he laughed and he said, well, Americans don't want to work this hard. But he said, something that really touched me, he said, if I lived in America, I wouldn't work here either. There are so many opportunities in the United States, meaning that people all over the world really still think that these streets are laid with gold, the United States of America, which there are. And these opportunities in this country are so great that people all over the world still believe coming to America is the key to success.
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities, and sometimes you've got to make your own gold, and it's a matter of being willing, ready, and able. So those who are here, those who come or develop, a sense of culture, a sense of family, with an expectation of doing well in school and taking advantage of things that are here, you might as well do it. In a lot of parts of the country, I'm thinking the Caribbean and parts of Africa, there's no free education, or free education stops at a certain level, really early, and people have to come up with tuition. They call them school fees. That's a term you'll hear a lot. School fees that they can't afford to pay. They can't afford to pay, and we're talking about the money we're talking about would be nothing for you. You probably spend more on coffee than these school fees. But in impoverished places where there are some very, very, very bright people, there is no money. They don't have the money. So they're working in mines or digging for cobalt and powering your cell phones and computers and the things that people are listening to us on or looking at us on. And they're getting maybe pennies a day and losing their lives and limbs for that. That's another story.
Yeah, well, I was talking about these crew members, though. They're making $4,000 or $5,000 a month, 3, 4, 5, I would say, but they spend nothing. They have 6-month contracts, then they go home for 2 months. So they save up all that money and send it home.
Yeah, I was like that too when I was on the ship. There's nowhere to go.
There's nothing.
I think I needed actually about I think it was like $25 a month for sundries and little nonsensical things, and the rest of it was just stored up. Where are you going to go?
I think the only money I spent was on cassettes for music down in the ship store.
Yeah, especially if you're at sea and you're not going to port for weeks or months.
Months.
It builds up.
Weeks, months.
Yeah, months.
I was on a nuclear carrier. They never pulled into port. They didn't have to. They didn't need gas. All we needed was some food. Well, check out these badass jets behind us, Dr. Paul. You see, mine, I asked you what that was, and you gave me a great answer. It's from the company Imagination. In other words, that's an artist's rendition of a badass, super bad jet. But what I like is your jet, because your jet's going very fast, very low over the water, and what it's blowing is a rooster tail. And I used to do that with my A6. And be careful how you do that, because if you turn the wrong way, you'll blow over a sailboat in the Mediterranean. I've seen it happen.
Yeah, don't do that. That's not good. That's not a good way to put on the air show.
Dr. Paul has a great wingman. Wow, what a story we have. And everybody out there, if you watch us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe. iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, write us a review. We really could use that. And you know what we have? We have a newsletter. And we're going to introduce something, because the newsletter is going to be called The Gouge. And in the Navy, the Gouge is insider information. Remember, we used to get the gouge about everything. You get a gouge on tests. You get a gouge on how to fly an airplane. You get a gouge when you go into a new city. It's insider information that you usually don't get. So we're going to start calling the newsletter The Gouge. What do you think about that, Dr. Paul?
That's a good idea. It's insider information that's legal. You won't go to jail for it. It's good information. Good tips and tricks, and nice to know stuff. That's what I call it.
All right. Well, here's first thing in the Gouge. The iPhone 15 is coming out, and the biggest difference is it's going to have a USB-C port. A USB-C port. So what they're doing is Europe has just passed a law that all computers and phones must have a USB-C port, so everything will work together. Well, Apple is going to start to do that. They're going to have a USB-C port. The iPhone 15 is coming out, so you won't have to have a whole bunch of different chargers like we usually do. Another little thing that we have, all you pickleballers, guess what? They're starting to build indoor pickleball courts. So that's coming. Anybody who's worried about the winter coming and stopping your little pickleball, well, you could do pickleball inside. And the last little gouge is that there are no more $20,000 cars. No more new $20,000 cars. The last one was the Mitsubishi Mirage, and that cost like $19,800. Well, now there are no more cars under $20,000. So we'll play this little game, Dr. Paul. What's the average of a new car today? What's the average cost of a new car today?
Well, I got to think about that. The last used car I got was right at $20,000. Let's see. Today, I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to say $38,000.
It's 10,000 off. It's 48,000.
Wow.
It's the average price of a new car, which is pretty high. What's the average cost, Dr. Paul, of a used car?
Well, if the new is 48, the used is probably 32.
Close, 29.
Okay,
To
cool.
me, a used car was 2,000, but now it's 29,000.
Wow. That's hard to believe. I remember a very nice new 3-bedroom, 2-bath house you could get in Florida for about $38,000. That's brand new. Everything, backyard, everything.
You're
I thought that
showing
was
your
expensive.
age.
Yep.
You're showing your age. Don't you think so, Dr. Paul?
Yeah. I mean, my first car was used and it was a year old. And I think brand new, it would have gone for, it was 53. I think it was 4,600. And I got it used for right at $3,000, which I considered a fortune at the time. It took me forever to pay it off. I think it was $90 a month. That was my biggest expense.
How about this gouge? This is really good gouge. Just check this out. If you adopt these 8 healthy habits by the time you're 40 years old, you ready for this? Men, on an average, can extend their life by 24 years, and women can extend their life by 21 years. So let me give you these 8 habits that you need to start picking up. And no matter when you pick up these habits, it will extend your life. The 8 habits are to get away from opioid addiction, smoking, managing stress, having a good diet, not drinking, having good sleep hygiene, and having positive social relationships. I had no idea how important all of that is, but they did a big survey and they did a big study on this, over 800,000 people. And on the average, men live 24 years longer if they avoided those 8 things that we just talked about. What do you think about that, Doc?
Yeah, I think this the 3 that stand out to me right away without even concentrating on it. Avoid drugs, alcohol, junk food,
And smoking.
get some exercise and sleep. Okay, and smoking, that kind of stuff. Drugs, alcohol, junk food, smoking, get some exercise, get some good sleep. Not rocket science.
No, it's not rocket science. And to add a little caveat to that, they also said exercise can relieve chronic pain. And 20% of Americans actually live with some kind of pain. And chronic pain can be a real bitch. And you're talking about running you to drugs. Chronic pain can do something like that. But this is how they did the test, which I love. They actually put people's hands in cold water and saw how long they could leave their hands in ice cold water. And they did it 8 years later. And the same people were able to keep their hands in ice cold water longer, meaning that they could tolerate pain better. And these are the people who exercise. The people who didn't exercise, they actually put their hands in the cold water, and 8 years later, they couldn't keep it in as long as they did 8 years ago. So chronic pain can be alleviated by exercise. What a great one that is, Dr. Paul.
Yes, yeah. Like I say, just move. Just move. Even sitting here. At some point after this broadcast, I'm going to get up and probably do about 25 squats before I sit back down. Get the blood moving.
Well, very good. And you know what that brings us to? It brings us to the Wingman PSA from the 11 facts in life. It's from fact number 1. Take responsibility for your actions. Take responsibility for your actions. And Dr. Paul, do I have an example for you? There was a United pilot. I'll show the picture. I think we even have a video for you YouTube watchers. A United pilot who started chopping away with an axe, a long-handled axe, at a gate, a parking gate. We know a lot of cuckoo pilots, but this one, boy, is he going to have to go through something to ever fly again. Huh, Doc?
It's very interesting. Yeah, I saw him. He was in uniform, no hat on, and he was chopping the gate with an axe. I guess it was a gate to a parking area, employee parking lot. I don't know if they're
Which
trying to
can
get
be
in.
frustrating, I have to admit.
Yeah, I couldn't get in, couldn't get out, and decided to take it on himself to move the thing. So he used his axe, which is interesting. I don't have an axe in my car. So, he may not be a serial killer. I'm sure. Let's assume he's a volunteer fireman or something like that. I'll give him some credit. But I saw that and I thought that, sometimes when people get tired, I've seen some really strange things when guys get really, really tired, and ladies too, and they're really fatigued, and you can get some bizarre behaviors that come out. I don't think I've ever exhibited them. I've seen a couple that were like legendary. There's no violence, but some. One guy went nuts in the lobby of a hotel in England at one time. That I still remember. That was in 1980, 89.
Well, a lot of our stories have to do with alcohol too, with our pilots.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a bad look, and I think he was a gentleman in the 60s, and he's arguing with the gate attendant, and then the police come. He's handcuffed and led away. He's running off in a field. He's going to have to talk to some people. But to those who fly, yeah, the strange thing is, so some of the pilots are generally no crazier than the general population, which is probably not comforting. But strangely enough, the crazy people, some of the people I've flown with definitely had some mental stuff going on. But interestingly enough, there are a lot of pilots who are really nutty, but they're very good aviators.
Very good pilots.
They're very good pilots. On the ground, you may want to stay away from them. But in the air, some are very, very good. So the guy might be great. I just joked to myself, well, maybe he's a flight manager, or maybe you should make him a flight manager. Now, that's not an insult to people who are chief pilots and flight managers, but he might be very talented in some areas, but he definitely has some explaining to do.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, you know what I see when I see that? How many psychologists he's going to have to talk to get back in that cockpit seat. How many people, and it's hard to prove that you're sane. It's extremely hard to prove that you're sane. So he's going to have to talk to a lot of doctors to get reinstated medically back to the cockpit, which the reason I feel bad for him. Well, we have a frequent flow line, and all you have to do, everybody out there, all of our frequent flyers, that's people who listen to us every day. All you have to do is write us at wingmanshow.com. That's wingmanshow.com. You can ask us any question you want, and Dr. Paul and I will try to answer it. And we have a question this time from somebody in Paris. But before I go there, how many other cities are there in America with the name Paris?
Offhand, I can think of a couple of them, but there's probably, half a dozen or so.
Well, I'm going to show all you YouTubers out there, you got to watch this. I'm going to show you a beautiful picture of Paris, France. You'll be seeing that now. And now I'm going to show you a picture of Paris, Tennessee. We have a frequent flow line from a woman in Paris, Tennessee. And the picture I showed you was in Paris, Kentucky. So this is not the same person. But anyway, she's 48 years old. She's divorced. And she wants to know if she can find the good man. I really don't know, because thank God I don't have to get into dating apps. I don't have to do that right now. Oh, I love you so much, my wife. But in order to find, I'll tell you what, on this cruise I went to, there were a lot of singles, and they had a lot of single events for singles. I think the best way to find a mate is to keep your heart open and start doing things outside of your home. You're not going to be able to find somebody in the house. So if you could start going to things that you enjoy, libraries, let's say there are classes, pottery, whatever you like to do, because then you'll find somebody with a similar interest. What do you think, Doc?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with what you said. And when you say how to find a good man, that's good. That's a relative term.
That's true.
And I'll assume that the person is a good person. It helps if you're a good person too, just like a respectable person. Getting respect. In order to get respect, you need to be respectable. That's a quote from the great grand Ayatollah, who I know personally. In order to get respect, you need to be respectable. And I think the same thing. If you want to you want a good man, you need to be a good person, good woman.
What we need to stop doing, Dr. Paul, is looking for the Denzel Washingtons, for the Brad Pitts. They're not out there anymore. And looks is only very temporary. What you want to find somebody is somebody who's handsome inside. And my mom always used to say, handsome is as handsome does. So you really need to stop looking at the outside so much, because a lot of people at that age, we've gotten older. You don't think you're that old, but you are. And so you got to look for something other than just good looks. If the person's a little heavy, maybe you can help them lose a little weight. But don't look for perfection. Look for kindness. Look for niceness. That's what I say.
Yeah. It's not time we get a little too wrapped up in the media. In fact, just last week, a friend of mine, a Navy buddy of mine, said his wife complained about the Top Gun movies from the squad. She said, "This is crap. You guys never looked that handsome ever." It's all Hollywood. So,
I don't know, Dr. Paul. I look pretty cool in my flight suit.
Yeah, I'm a legend in my own mind. I think I'm fine. But in general, everybody's not coming out of central casting. That's just reality. Most people, some are extraordinary and special. Most people are average and ordinary. Most of the human race that I've seen.
Most people are average, except this person we're going to talk about next. We do a wingman of the week every time. Somebody who helps out somebody who has somebody sick. A wingman is somebody that watches your back. And boy, do we have a wingman today. Dr. Paul, I'm going to chime in on this a little bit, but I'm going to let you do this. Dr. Paul, tell me about this great wingman we have this week.
This wingman, it's really one, but it's linked with another guy, and I call them blood brothers. There's a guy named Brian Dooley. He was an offensive lineman from Eastern Michigan University, which honestly I'd never heard of. Actually, I have a degree from Central Michigan University, but he's from Eastern Michigan University, and he's on the football team. He had a good friend on the team named Zach Conti. Zach Conti was a walk-on, meaning he was not a scholarship player. Brian Dooley was a scholarship player. Zach Conti was not. And he was just a hardworking guy, and he was paying all of his expenses on his own. He was working side jobs other than football and school. He was working side jobs, doing all kinds of stuff. And one of the things he was doing was he was selling blood plasma. Selling blood plasma. That's when they separate your blood and they take some of the nutrients that are used, and they can help other people, take the proteins out and be used to help other people with blood disorders. So anyway, he was doing this, and like the American Red Cross lets you donate, like I think once every 28 days. In some places, individual companies let you do it every 2 weeks. There's a place near Costco here. I see people lined up all the time giving blood plasma. You can make $30, $60. Some make $1,000 a month. But anyway, when it came time to pay the bills, he's donating blood and doing these things. And his teammate, Brian Dooley, was so impressed by this, he wanted to know if there was a way he could help him. So he goes to his coach and says, "Can I give him my scholarship? This is kind of exceptional."
Wow. And
the coach says, "Well, I never heard of it, but I think the answer is yes." And the answer is yes. And at a team ceremony, he stands up. Brian Dooley is in his last year of eligibility, and I guess has the money to pay for it. I think he can go 5 years. And he transfers it to Zach Conti because of his work ethic and the camaraderie that they have on the team, and the fact that he needs it. And he thought he really, really deserved it as a walk-on and as somebody who's just working all the time. So our wingman of this week is Brian Dooley. And I'm going to say Zach Conti too, because he's obviously someone who's deserving and worthwhile to make this whole thing happen.
No doubt. Zach Conti was the inspiration for Brian Dooley to work hard in football, because this kid I was a walk-on at New Mexico State, matter of fact, in basketball. I had scholarships around the New York area, but I didn't want to stay close to home. I wanted to go as far away as possible. So I was a walk-on at New Mexico State. I did not make the basketball team, But I worked harder than any of those other basketball players in practice and everything else I did. I did make the football team, believe it or not. Never playing football before. I made a Division I spring team, but I was a walk-on. What I really was impressed with is that somebody gave something that he worked so hard for, and that's an athletic scholarship, to somebody else. And the reason he gave it to him because he was impressed by this guy's work habit. You know what we say, Dr. Paul? The media says if it bleeds, it leads. Well, the wingmen say if it's good, it should. And this wingman story is a good one. Dr. Paul, whatever you and our listeners think is beautiful, whatever you and our listeners think is meaningful, and whatever you and our listeners, whatever makes you happy, may you have that today and forever. Dr. Paul, I pray for peace.
I pray for peace too. And to those who listen, like, and share our message, we appreciate you. Do something good for someone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and refer to use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth, and goodwill towards all men and women.